myself there's a logical explanation for this. There has to be. But the more I think about it, the more my skin crawls. And I can't shake the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with how we got here. My name is Tyler, and I'm recording this because I need to get it all down while it's still fresh. While I can still remember the details that don't make sense. Because when I woke up this morning, if it was morning, everything was already set up perfectly and none of us remember arriving. Picture this. You're expecting to wake up in a cramped car after driving all night, sore and cranky, with hours of unpacking and setup ahead of you. Instead, you wake up in your own tent, fully assembled, sleeping bag zipped up to your chin, with the sound of a crackling campfire outside, and the smell of coffee already brewing. That's what happened to all three of us. I unzipped my tent and found our entire campsite laid out like a magazine spread. Ben's dome tent perfectly positioned downwind from the fire pit. Zoe's smaller tent angled to catch the morning sun, just like she always prefers. Our cooler properly secured with the bare rope exactly how my dad taught me. Camp chairs arranged in a perfect circle around a fire that someone had built using the exact stacking method I learned in Boy Scouts. "Morning, sunshine," Zoe called out, but her voice had this forced cheerfulness that immediately put me on edge. She was sitting by the fire, nursing a metal camping mug, and when I looked closer I could see the tension in her shoulders. Ben crawled out of his tent, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. His hair was sticking up in 12 different directions, and he kept squinting at everything like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Okay, seriously," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Did we set all this up last night? Because I have zero memory of doing any of this." That's when it hit me. I couldn't remember arriving either. The last thing I clearly remembered was sitting in my dorm room, loading my backpack and checking the weather forecast. Everything after that was just blank. "I remember driving," Zoe said slowly, like she was testing each word. "I remember singing along to that playlist you made, Tyler. But I don't remember stopping. I don't remember getting out of the car. I walked over to where we'd apparently parked, and my Jeep was there, perfectly positioned between two trees, but the engine was cold. Stone cold. Like it had been sitting there for hours, maybe longer. This is insane," Ben muttered, and I could hear that edge in his voice that meant he was about to spiral into full paranoid mode. People don't just forget setting up an entire campsite. This is like collective amnesia or something. But here's the thing that really got to me. Everything was exactly how we would have done it. Not just close, but perfect. Ben's tent was positioned with mathematical precision to avoid tree roots. Zoe's camp chair was angled just right to catch the morning light, while staying out of the smoke. My own gear was organized with the same obsessive attention to detail I always use. It was like someone had been watching us camp for years, taking notes on every preference, every habit, every tiny detail of how we do things. And then, they'd recreated it all while we were, what? Unconscious. Maybe we were just really tired, Zoe suggested, but I could tell she didn't believe it. She was doing that thing where she picks at her thumbnail when she's nervous. Maybe we were running on autopilot. For hours, Ben shot back, setting up camp, building a fire, organizing all our gear, and none of us remember any of it? I tried to think of a logical explanation. Maybe we'd been more exhausted than we realized. Maybe we'd set everything up in a sleep-deprived haze and our brains just weren't forming memories properly. But as I looked around the campsite, I kept noticing things that didn't add up. The fire, for instance. Someone had built it using a mix of hardwood and kindling that would burn for hours, but the wood was already burned down to perfect coals. The kind of coals you get after tending a fire for most of the night, which meant someone had been awake, feeding it, keeping it going. And the coffee. Zoe was drinking coffee from her favorite camping mug, but I could see the entire coffee setup on the camp table. French press, manual grinder. The bag of beans she'd bought specifically for this trip, all perfectly arranged, all showing signs of use. "Zoe," I said carefully, "do you remember making coffee this morning?" She froze with the mug halfway to her lips. She stared down at the coffee like it might explain itself. "I woke up, and it was just there. still hot. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Ben was looking between us like we were all losing our minds, and maybe we were. But I had to ask the question that was eating at me. "Guys," I said, "do any of you remember packing this stuff?" We went through our gear piece by piece. My camp stove, properly assembled and connected to a fresh propane canister. Ben's portable radio tuned to a local station that was playing classic rock. Zoe's first aid kit, reorganized according to her usual system. All of it exactly where it should be, exactly how we would have arranged it. But none of us remembered packing it into the car. None of us remembered the drive beyond those first few miles. None of us remembered arriving, unloading, setting up. It was like we'd been sleepwalking through our own lives. "Okay," Ben said, and I could hear him trying to inject some rationality into the situation. "Let's just think about this logically. We planned this trip for weeks. We're here, our stuff is here, everything looks normal. Maybe we're just overthinking it." He clicked on his radio, probably hoping some normal music would help reset our brains. Instead, what came through the speakers made my blood run cold. It was our voices, all three of us having a conversation I didn't remember having. "Should have brought more marshmallows," Zoe's voice was saying through the static. "We brought 3 bags," Ben's voice replied. "How many s'mores are you planning to eat?" And then my own voice, clear as day. "Just wait until you see what I brought for breakfast tomorrow. You're going to lose your minds." Ben's hand was shaking as he reached for the radio dial. "What the hell is this?" "It's us," Zoe whispered. "That's us talking." I remembered the conversation now, sort of. It felt like deja vu, like something I'd dreamed. But I couldn't place when it had happened. Not last night, because we'd all been unconscious. Not this morning, because we'd been too freaked out to talk about marshmallows. Ben frantically turned the dial trying to find the source of the transmission, but every station was either static or silence. When he turned back to the original frequency, the voices were gone. "Equipment malfunction," he said firmly. "It has to be. Radio stations sometimes pick up old transmissions, or maybe it's interference from..." "Ben," Zoe's voice was quiet but urgent. "Look at your watch." He glanced down at his wrist, and I saw his face go pale. "It's broken," he said. "The date is wrong." "What's it say?" "Today's date. But that's impossible, because it was showing yesterday's date when I went to bed last night." I checked my phone. Dead battery, which was weird because I always charged it before trips, but when I connected it to my portable charger, the date that appeared on the screen was today's date, October 15th. "Mine too," Zoe said, staring at her phone. "But I could have sworn it was the 14th when we left." The logical part of my brain was screaming that there had to be an explanation. Daylight saving time, maybe, or some kind of glitch with the cell towers out here. But the rest of me was starting to accept that something was very, very wrong. That's when we heard it. A crackle from Ben's radio, and then a voice that sounded like mine, but distant and hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "If you're hearing this," the voice said, "then you're already too late. The loop has started, and there's no going back." Ben yanked the radio's power cord, but the voice continued. "You didn't choose to come here. You were brought here, and now you're part of it. Just like everyone else who never left." The transmission cut to static, and then silence. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was shaking. Not just from cold, but from a deep primal fear that I couldn't rationalize away. Because that voice, even though it sounded like mine, was saying things I'd never said, warning us about things I didn't understand. "We need to leave," Ben said. And for once, his paranoia felt completely justified. Right now. Pack everything up and get out of here. But as we started breaking down the camp, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There, in the soft dirt near the fire pit, were footprints. 3 sets of them, circling the camp in a pattern that suggested someone had been walking around our tents while we slept. The prints were perfectly clear, showing the treads of hiking boots we all recognized. Ben's Merrill boots, with the distinctive waffle pattern. Zoe's smaller Salomon boots, with the star-shaped lugs. My own beat-up Timberlands with the worn-down heel. We'd been walking around the camp while we were unconscious, all three of us moving in organized patterns like we were following some kind of ritual. "This is impossible," Ben was muttering, but his voice was getting higher, more frantic. "This is actually impossible." Zoe was staring at the footprints with that intense focus she gets when she's trying to solve a problem. "Tyler," she said slowly, "what if we didn't just forget arriving? What if we never actually arrived at all?" Before I could ask what she meant, the radio crackled back to life. This time, it was a different voice, one I didn't recognize. Older, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Welcome to the Remnants loop," the voice said. "I hope you enjoyed your first night. Don't worry about the memory loss, it's perfectly normal. Everyone experiences it the first time." The voice paused and I could hear something that sounded like typing in the background. "You're probably wondering how you got here, why you can't remember setting up camp. The answer is simple. You've been here before. Many times, in fact. You just don't remember because the loop resets every 72 hours. My legs felt weak. I sat down hard on a log, trying to process what I was hearing. "The good news is that you have 2.5 days to figure out how to break the cycle. The bad news is that everyone who's tried has failed. Their consciousness fragments are still here, though, in the echo. They're trying to help you, but they can only communicate through electronic devices." Static filled the air for a moment, and then the voice continued, warmer now, almost friendly. "My name is Dr. Marcus Vale, and I've been studying this phenomenon for quite some time. If you're smart, if you're careful, maybe you can be the first to escape. But first, you need to understand what you are dealing with." The transmission cut out, leaving us in silence broken only by the crackling of the fire. I looked at Ben and Zoe, seeing my own terror reflected in their faces. Whatever was happening to us, it was bigger than memory loss or equipment malfunctions. We were trapped in something that didn't follow normal rules, something that treated human consciousness like a recording that could be played back endlessly. "We need to stay together," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Whatever this is, whatever's happening to us, we don't split up. We don't leave each other alone." Zoe nodded, but Ben was already shaking his head. "Are you insane? We need to run. Right now. Get in the car and drive until we're as far away from here as possible." "And go where?" I asked. "If what that voice said is true, if we're in some kind of loop, then maybe we can't leave. Maybe we've already tried." That's when I noticed something that made my blood freeze. There, hanging from a branch about 20 feet away, was a piece of fabric. Red flannel, the same material as the shirt I was wearing, but it was weathered, faded, like it had been hanging there for months. I walked over to it slowly, my heart pounding. When I got close enough to touch it, I could see that it wasn't just any red flannel. It was torn in the exact same pattern as a rip in my own shirt. A rip I'd gotten last week when I'd caught it on a fence. "Tyler," Zoe called out, and her voice was tight with fear. "You need to see this." She was standing by the car, holding something in her hands. As I got closer, I could see it was a journal. My journal, the one I'd brought to document our trip. But it was filled with entries in my own handwriting, entries I didn't remember writing. Day 1, we arrived at the site, but something's wrong. None of us remember the drive. Day 2, the radio is broadcasting our voices. Ben thinks it's a malfunction, but I'm starting to think it's something else. Day 3, we tried to leave. The car wouldn't start. Found evidence that we've been here before. The entries went on for pages, describing days I had no memory of, decisions I hadn't made, conversations I'd never had. But the handwriting was definitely mine, and the details were too specific to be fake. The last entry was different, written in shaky handwriting that looked like it had been scrawled in desperate haste. Day 17. Dr. Vale found us. Zoe is gone. Ben is changing. If anyone reads this, don't trust the helpful camper. He's not what he seems. The loop is breaking down, but it's not setting us free. It's making us into something else. something that belongs here permanently. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. We need to stick together, I said again, but this time it felt like a prayer. Because I was starting to understand that we weren't just lost. We were caught in something that had been designed to trap us, to study us, to slowly tear away everything that made us human. The radio crackled one more time, and this time it was Ben's voice coming through the speakers. But Ben was standing right next to the radio, his mouth closed, his face pale with shock. Tyler, Ben's voice said from the radio, if you're hearing this, then we're already dead. The loop doesn't just reset time, it resets us. We're going to die here, over and over until there's nothing left of who we used to be. The transmission ended with a sound that made my skin crawl. It was laughter, but not quite human, like something that had once been Ben, but had forgotten how to be anything other than afraid. I'm recording this because I need to remember. I need to document what's happening to us before the loop resets again, before we wake up tomorrow with no memory of today's discoveries. Because I have a feeling that tomorrow we're going to wake up in our tents again, with the fire already burning and the coffee already made. And we're going to go through all of this again, unless we can figure out how to break free. But first we need to survive whatever is coming for us in the dark. The sun is setting now, and I can hear something moving in the trees. Something that knows we're here. Something that's been waiting for us to discover the truth. I just hope we're strong enough to face it. I need to check my phone again. The timestamp says 11:47 p.m., but that can't be right. We just finished setting up camp maybe an hour ago, and it was barely getting dark then. Avery's already in her sleeping bag, but I can see she's not sleeping. None of us are sleeping. The fire is wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. When we first got it going, the flames were normal, orange and yellow, crackling the way campfires are supposed to, but now there's this blue tinge to it, like someone mixed chemicals into the wood. The light it's throwing off feels cold, even though I can still feel the heat on my face. Cam, you seeing this? Avery's voice is barely above a whisper, but in the dead silence out here, it might as well be a shout. I am seeing it. The blue flames dance higher than they should, and there's something hypnotic about the way they move, almost like they're reaching for something. Maybe it's just the wood, I say, but even I don't believe that. Sometimes different trees burn different colors. Avery sits up in her sleeping bag, and I can see her face in the firelight. She's got this look, the same one she had when we were planning this trip. Like she's seeing something the rest of us are missing. That's not how fire works, Cam. She's right, of course. Avery's always right about these things. That's why I wanted to bring her out here in the first place. After everything that happened with her mom last year, and then all the stress from school, she needed to get away from everything. We both did, honestly. My family's been going through their own hell with the layoffs at the plant, and my dad's been taking it out on everyone in the house. This trip was supposed to be our escape. But now I'm wondering if we just traded one kind of trouble for another. The whispers start so quietly I almost miss them. At first I think it's just the wind moving through the trees. But there's no wind tonight. The air is completely still, thick in that way it gets before a storm. The whispers are coming from the fire itself. I lean closer, trying to make out what they're saying. And that's when I hear it. My own voice, drifting up from the blue flames. Maybe it's just the wood. Sometimes different trees burn different colors. My blood goes cold. Avery, did you hear that? She's already moving, climbing out of her sleeping bag with that careful, controlled way she has. Avery never rushes, never panics, but I can see the tension in her shoulders. I heard it. The whispers get clearer now, and it's not just my voice anymore. It's both of us, having the conversation we had maybe 30 seconds ago. But there's something off about it. Like listening to a recording that's been slowed down or sped up just enough to make it wrong. That's not how fire works, Cam, the fire Avery says. And her voice has this hollow quality to it, like it's coming from very far away. I grab a stick and start poking at the logs, trying to break up whatever is causing this. It's got to be some kind of gas pocket in the wood, or maybe... Stop! Avery's voice cuts through my rambling. She's standing now, and she's looking past the fire, deeper into the woods. There's someone out there. I follow her gaze and see them. 3 figures standing just at the edge of the firelight. They're maybe 50 yards away, but I can make out their shapes clearly enough. 2 guys and a girl all around our age. They've got their own campfire going, and they're just watching us. Hello! I call out, raising my hand in greeting. The figures don't respond, don't move. They just keep staring. Avery grabs my arm. Cam, don't... What? They're just other campers. Maybe they heard the weird fire thing too. I try to sound casual, but there's something about the way they're standing that makes my skin crawl. They're too still, too perfectly positioned. Like they're posing for a photograph. The fire voices start up again, but now it's not just our conversation. I can hear other people talking, voices I don't recognize having conversations I've never heard. A guy's voice, young, nervous. Tyler, man, I think we should pack up and leave. This place is giving me the creeps. Another voice, deeper, more confident. Come on, Ben. We drove 6 hours to get here. We're not leaving because of some weird campfire stories. A girl's voice, soft but worried. Ben's right, Tyler. Something doesn't feel right about this place. I keep feeling like we're being watched. I look at Avery. She's gone completely pale, and she's backing away from the fire like it might jump out and grab her. Those voices, she says, so quietly I almost can't hear her. They're talking about us, about feeling watched. The 3 figures are still there, but now I can see them more clearly. The girl has long dark hair and is wearing a red jacket. One of the guys is tall and lanky, the other shorter and stockier. They're not moving, but their fire is flickering in the exact same pattern as ours. This is impossible, I mutter, but even as I say it, I know something seriously wrong here. Fires don't just repeat conversations. The whispers from our fire are getting louder now, overlapping with each other in a way that makes my head hurt. I can hear fragments of conversations, some that sound like they happened hours ago, others that feel like they're from years past. A woman's voice, older, scared. Richard, we need to leave. Now before they find us. A man's voice urgent. Elena, just a little longer. I'm so close to figuring this out. Avery makes it sound like she's been punched in the gut. She's staring at the fire with this expression I've never seen before. Not just fear, but recognition. Like she knows those voices. We need to go, she says. And she's already moving toward our backpacks. Right now. I don't argue. There's something in her voice that tells me this isn't the time for questions. I start grabbing our gear, stuffing it into the packs as quickly as I can. The blue flames are getting higher now and the voices are getting clearer. The girl's voice from the fire. Tyler, look at them. They're packing up. They're leaving. And then the tall guy's voice. No, wait. They're not leaving. They're us. From tomorrow night. I freeze, a chill running down my spine that has nothing to do with the night air. I look up at the 3 figures and now I can see their faces clearly. The girl in the red jacket is looking right at me. And her mouth is moving, but the words are coming from our fire. Cam, you need to run, now. That's when I notice the journal. It's sitting on the ground next to my sleeping bag, exactly where I remember putting it when we first made camp. But that's impossible because I didn't bring a journal. I never write in journals, that's more Avery's thing. But there it is, leather bound and worn, with my name written on the cover in handwriting that looks exactly like mine. I pick it up with shaking hands and flip it open. The first page is dated today, with today's date, and it's written in my handwriting. Day 1, the fire burned blue tonight. Avery knew what it meant before I did. She always knows. The voices in the flames told us about the others, the ones who never left. We should have listened. We should have run when we had the chance, but we stayed, and now we're part of it too. The loop never ends, it just adds more voices to the fire. Tomorrow night, we'll be the ones watching new campers arrive. We'll be the ones they see across the firelight, and we'll try to warn them, but they won't listen. They never listen. I'm writing this so I'll remember for what good it will do. The blue fire takes your memories first, then it takes everything else. My hands hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the journal. Avery, look at this! She's already got her pack on, and she's pulling mine toward me. I don't need to look at it. I know what it says. How could you possibly? Because I've seen this before. Her voice is flat, controlled, but I can hear the fear underneath. Not here, but somewhere else. A long time ago. With my parents. The three figures are moving now, walking toward us with that same too perfect movement. As they get closer, I can see that they're not quite right. Their faces are familiar, the kind of familiar that makes you think you've seen them before, but you can't remember where. And their eyes reflect the firelight in a way that human eyes shouldn't. Avery, we need to go. Now. She's already moving, heading away from the fire and deeper into the woods. I follow her, my pack bouncing against my back as we crash through the underbrush. Behind us, I can hear the voices from the fire getting louder, more insistent. My own voice, pleading, "Don't leave us here. Don't let us become like them." Avery's voice, calm and analytical. The pattern repeats every night. New campers arrive, they see the fire, they hear the voices, and then they join them. And then a voice I don't recognize, older, more authoritative. The experiment was never meant to create this, but once it started, we couldn't stop it. The consciousness transfer fragments just loop. Forever. We run until we can't hear the voices anymore, until the blue glow of the fire disappears behind the trees. When we finally stop, we're both breathing hard, and I can feel sweat cooling on my skin in the night air. What was that? I gasp out between breaths. What were those things? Avery is quiet for a long moment, and when she speaks, her voice is different. Smaller. More vulnerable than I've ever heard it. I think they were us. From tomorrow night. Or yesterday. Time doesn't work right here. That's impossible. Is it? She turns to face me, and in the moonlight I can see tears on her cheeks. The voices in the fire. One of them called the woman Elena. That was my mother's name. And the man. He sounded like my father. I remember her telling me about her parents. How her mother died when she was young. And how her father died in some kind of accident a few years later. She never talked about the details, but now I'm starting to wonder if there were details she never knew. We need to get out of here, I say. Back to the car, back to civilization. We can figure out what this is once we're safe. But even as I say it, I'm not sure we can get out. The woods around us look the same in every direction, and I can't remember which way we came from. The moon is full overhead, but it seems to be casting shadows in the wrong directions. And then, I hear it. The sound of a campfire crackling in the distance. Not behind us, where we left the blue flames, but ahead of us. A warm orange glow filtering through the trees. Do you see that? Avery asks, and I can hear the hope in her voice. Yeah, maybe it's other campers. Real ones. We move toward the light, and as we get closer, I can make out the shapes of two people sitting around a normal-looking fire. They're young, around our age, and they're talking in quiet voices. Thank God, Avery breathes. Finally someone who can help us. But as we get closer, I start to make out their faces. And my blood turns to ice. It's us, Avery and me, sitting around a campfire, having a conversation I remember having about 3 hours ago. Maybe it's just the wood, Firecam is saying. Sometimes different trees burn different colors. That's not how fire works, Cam, Fire Avery replies. I grab the real Avery's arm. We need to go, now. But she's staring at our doubles with that same recognition I saw before. This is where it starts, she whispers. This is where the loop begins. The fire versions of us look up then, and they see us standing at the edge of the firelight. Fire Avery's eyes widen, and she nudges Firecam with her elbow. There's someone out there, Fire Avery says, and her voice carries clearly through the night air. I watch Firecam look up and see us. I watch him raise his hand in greeting, just like I did maybe an hour ago. And I realize that we're not just trapped in some weird supernatural event. We're trapped in time itself. Hello, Firecam calls out, and his voice sounds exactly like mine because it is mine. Are you okay? Do you need help? I want to run, but my feet won't move. I want to scream, but no sound comes out. All I can do is watch as the loop plays out again, exactly as it happened before. And somewhere in the distance I can hear the blue flames crackling, and new voices joining the chorus of the trapped. Tomorrow night, we'll be the ones sitting by the fire. We'll be the ones other campers see in the distance, and we'll try to warn them, but they won't listen. They never listen, because the loop never ends, it just adds more voices to the fire. I can hear it again. That humming, it's been 3 hours since we first heard it drifting through the trees, and I can't shake the feeling that it's getting closer. Ben thinks I'm losing it, but Zoe hears it too. She won't admit it, but I see the way her eyes dart toward the forest when that melody starts up. We're sitting around our campfire, the one we apparently built, but don't remember building, and the flames are doing this weird thing where they flicker in rhythm with the humming. Ben's got his back to the woods, stubbornly focused on his phone even though we haven't had signal since we can't remember when. Tyler, you're doing that thing again, Zoe says, her voice gentle but strained. That thing where you chew your lip when you're about to do something stupid. I stop chewing my lip. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Famous last words. Ben mutters, not looking up from his phone. Right up there with what could go wrong, and I'll be right back. But the humming is getting louder, and it's beautiful in a way that makes my chest ache. Like a lullaby my mom used to sing, but wrong somehow. Twisted. The melody keeps shifting, becoming something else entirely when I try to focus on it. Guys, I say, standing up and brushing dirt off my jeans. I think we need to check it out. No. Ben's voice is flat, final. Absolutely not. We've been over this. Weird shit happens in these woods. We stick together, we stay by the fire, we wait for morning. But what if someone needs help? The words come out before I can stop them. And I know how they sound. I know Ben's gonna roll his eyes and launch into his whole speech about horror movie logic. But there's something about that humming that feels familiar, like I've heard it before. Zoe stands up too, and I can see the internal war playing out on her face. She's always been the one who can sense things the rest of us miss, and right now she's picking up on something that's making her nervous. Tyler, she says carefully, what if it's not someone who needs help? What if it's something else? The humming stops. Just like that, the forest goes dead silent. No insects, no wind, no rustling leaves. Even our fire stops crackling. The silence is so complete it makes my ears ring. Okay, Ben says slowly, finally looking up from his phone. That's officially not normal. And then my voice calls out from the darkness. Help me. It's my voice. Exactly my voice. But I'm standing right here and my mouth isn't moving. Ben and Zoe both turn to stare at me and I see my own confusion reflected in their faces. Please, my voice calls again, and this time I can hear the desperation in it. I'm lost. I can't find my way back to camp. What the hell? Ben whispers. Zoe grabs my arm. Tyler, that's not you, right? Tell me, that's not you. It's not me, I say, but even as the words leave my mouth, I'm not entirely sure. Because that voice, it sounds exactly like me when I'm scared. And there's something in the inflection, the way it pronounced lost, that's so perfectly me it makes my skin crawl. Tyler, please, the voice calls again. And now it's closer. Maybe 50 yards into the tree line. I followed the humming, but now I can't find my way back. It's so dark. Ben is on his feet now, and I can see his hand shaking. This isn't happening. This is not happening. But it is happening, and as much as every rational part of my brain is screaming at me to stay put, to listen to Ben, to not be the idiot who wanders into the dark forest when creepy shit is going down, I can't ignore the sound of my own voice begging for help. I have to go, I say. No, you don't, Zoe says firmly. Tyler, think about this. If that's really you calling for help, then who are you? Because you're standing right here. Maybe it's an echo, I say, but even I don't believe it. Echoes don't work like that. Echoes don't continue conversations. Tyler, I'm getting scared. my voice calls from the darkness, and the fear in it is so real, so genuine, that it makes my chest tighten. There's something wrong with this place. Something really wrong. You think? Ben says sarcastically, but his voice cracks on the words. I take a step toward the forest, and Zoe's grip on my arm tightens. Don't, she whispers. Please don't. I have a really bad feeling about this. But my voice is calling again, and now it's not just asking for help, it's begging. I can see lights. It says, moving lights. They're all around me, and they're getting closer. Please, I need you to come get me. I need you to come now. The lights. My blood turns to ice water. We've seen those lights before, flickering through the trees like fireflies that move too fast, too purposefully. Ben called them St. Elmo's fire, some kind of electrical phenomenon, but they felt wrong. They felt alive. Tyler, Zoe says. And there's something in her voice I've never heard before, pure terror. Look at the fire. I look down at our campfire and the flames are bending. Actually bending. Like they're being pulled toward the forest. And in the flames I can see shapes, faces. And one of them looks exactly like me. The lights are moving. My voice calls from the darkness. And now it's frantic. They're circling me. Oh God. They're circling me. Tyler, please, I need you to... The voice cuts off with a sound that's part scream, part static, part something else entirely. Something that makes my teeth ache and my vision blur. That's it, Ben says, his voice barely controlled. We're leaving, right now. We pack up, we get in the car, and we drive until we hit civilization. We can't leave, I say, and I'm surprised by how steady my voice sounds. If that's really me out there, it's not you, Ben shouts. You're right here. That thing out there, whatever it is, it's not you. But even as he says it, I can see the doubt in his eyes. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you rationalize hearing your own voice calling for help from the darkness? Tyler, Zoe says quietly, what if it's not just your voice? What if it's you? What if you're out there, and you're here, and this whole thing is more complicated than we thought? The idea sends a chill through me that has nothing to do with the cold night air, because there's something about this place. Something about the way time seems to slip and slide, the way our memories feel fuzzy around the edges that makes impossible things feel possible. I have to go, I say again, and this time I mean it. I have to know. Then we all go, Zoe says, and her voice is stronger now, more determined. We stick together. That's the rule, right? We don't split up. Ben looks like he wants to argue, but he doesn't. Maybe because he knows we're right. Maybe because he's just as curious as we are, even if he won't admit it. Or maybe because he's too scared to be left alone with whatever's happening to our campfire. The flames are still bending toward the forest, and now I can hear something else underneath the crackling. Whispers. Dozens of them. All speaking at once in voices I almost recognize. Fine, Ben says, grabbing his backpack, but we stay together. No matter what happens out there, we stay together. I nod, grabbing my flashlight and checking the batteries. The light is steady, bright, but somehow it feels inadequate against the darkness pressing in around us. Ready? I ask. Neither of them answer, but they both nod. We step into the forest, and immediately the temperature drops 20 degrees. My breath comes out in invisible puffs, and I can feel the cold seeping through my jacket. The trees seem closer together here, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Tyler? I call out, and the sound of my own voice calling my own name makes me dizzy. I'm here. Can you hear me? No response. Just the sound of our footsteps on dead leaves and the distant crackling of our abandoned campfire. This is insane, Ben mutters behind me. We're literally following Tyler's voice to find Tyler. Do you understand how insane that is? I understand, Zoe says. But her voice is distant, distracted. Tyler, look at your flashlight. I look down, and my blood freezes. The beam of my flashlight is bending. Actually bending. Like light can be folded, twisted, redirected. and it's pointing deeper into the forest towards something I can't see. The lights, I whisper, they're here. And they are. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, flickering through the trees like stars that have fallen to earth. They're beautiful and terrible at the same time, pulsing with a rhythm that matches my heartbeat. They're moving, Zoe breathes. She's right. The lights are converging, forming patterns, shapes. And as they get closer, I can see that they're not just lights. They're reflections. Fragments of light bouncing off surfaces that shouldn't exist, creating impossible geometries in the darkness. Tyler, my voice calls again, and now it's coming from everywhere at once. They're all around me. I can see them clearly now. They're not just lights. The voice trails off, but I can fill in the blank. Because I can see what they are now. They're consciousness. Pure thought given form. Fragments of minds that have been broken apart and scattered like shattered glass. We need to go back, Ben says, but his voice is dreamy, hypnotized. We need to go back right now. But I can't move. The lights are so beautiful, so mesmerizing, and they're showing me things. Memories that aren't mine, experiences that belong to someone else. I can see a laboratory, sterile and white, with machines that hum with the same melody I heard by the campfire. I can see a man in a lab coat, his face twisted with grief and obsession, working feverishly on something that pulses with unnatural life. The consciousness transfer, I whisper, and I don't know where the words come from. They were trying to transfer consciousness. What? Zoe's voice seems to come from very far away. The experiments, I say, and now I'm remembering things that never happened to me. They were trying to move human consciousness from one body to another. But it went wrong. It broke apart. Created fragments. Tyler, Ben says, and his voice is sharp with panic. Tyler, we need to leave. Now! But I can't leave. Because I can see him now standing in the middle of the light swarm. Another me, exactly like me, but his eyes are wrong. They're too bright, too knowing. And when he smiles, I can see that his teeth are too sharp. Finally, he says, and his voice is my voice, but not my voice. I've been waiting for you. You're not real, I say. But even as I say it, I know it's not true. He's as real as I am. Maybe more real. I'm as real as you are, he says, echoing my thoughts. I'm the part of you that followed the humming. The part that couldn't resist the call. The part that always has to know. Always has to investigate. Always has to be the hero. Tyler, Zoe says behind me, and I can hear her moving closer. Tyler, that's not you. That's something else wearing your face. But the other me is laughing now, and the sound is like breaking glass. She's right, he says. I'm not you, I'm better. I'm what you could become if you just stopped fighting it. If you just let the lights in. The swarm is getting closer, and I can feel them pressing against my skin like warm water. They're trying to get inside, to merge with me, to make me part of the pattern. Don't, I say, but my voice is weak, uncertain. It doesn't hurt, the other me says. It's beautiful. You'll understand everything. You'll be part of something bigger. Tyler, Ben's voice is desperate now. We have to go. But I can't move. The lights are inside me now, showing me visions of what I could become. I could be eternal. Part of the swarm, part of the pattern. I could understand everything, know everything, be everything. Tyler, Zoe says, and suddenly her hand is on my arm, solid and warm and real. Tyler, look at me. I turn to look at her, and her eyes are clear, unclouded by the lights. She's fighting them, resisting their pull. That's not you, she says firmly. That's what they want you to become. But you're stronger than that. You're better than that. Am I ask, and I genuinely don't know. Yes, she says. You are. Because you care about us. You care about Ben and me more than you care about yourself. That's why you wanted to investigate in the first place. Not because you're curious, but because you thought someone might need help. The other me is still smiling, but now there's something desperate in his expression. She's lying, he says. She's trying to keep you from understanding, from becoming what you're meant to be. And what's that? I ask. Free, he says. Free from doubt, from fear, from the weight of caring about people who will only hold you back. Tyler, Ben says, and his voice is closer now. The lights are fading. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He's right. The swarm is losing its coherence, the light's beginning to scatter. The other me is flickering, becoming transparent. You can't fight it forever, he says, and now his voice is fading too. The pattern is stronger than you are. The loop is stronger than you are. You'll be back, and next time, you'll understand. Maybe, I say, but not tonight. The lights scatter completely, and the other me vanishes with a sound like a dying radio signal. The forest returns to normal. Or what passes for normal in this place. The temperature rises. My flashlight beam straightens, and I can hear insects again. Jesus, Ben breathes. What the hell was that? A fragment, I say, though I'm not sure where the knowledge comes from. A piece of consciousness that got separated from the whole. It was trying to make me like it. Did it work? Zoe asks quietly. I consider the question. Part of me is different now. I can feel it. Part of me understands things I didn't understand before. But the core of me, the part that cares about my friends, that wants to protect them, that's still intact. No, I say. It didn't work. We walk back to camp in silence, and I notice that our fire is burning normally again. The flames are orange and steady, and there are no faces in them. Whatever hold the lights had on this place has been broken, at least temporarily. We need to leave, Ben says as we sit down around the fire. First light, we pack up and we get out of here. We can't, I say, and I'm surprised by how certain I sound. There are others. Other fragments, other pieces of consciousness trapped here. And there's something else, something controlling them. How do you know that? Zoe asks. I saw it, I say. When the lights were in my head, I saw glimpses of what this place really is. It's not just a camping spot. It's a testing ground. Someone's been luring people here, experimenting on them. Experimenting how? Ben asks, but I can see in his eyes that he doesn't really want to know. Consciousness transfer, I say. They were trying to move human consciousness from one body to another. But the process breaks people apart, creates fragments. And those fragments are trapped here, in a loop, replaying their final moments over and over. That's impossible, Ben says, but there's no conviction in his voice. Is it? I ask. After what we just saw? After what we've experienced since we got here? He doesn't answer, but I can see him thinking, trying to rationalize what can't be rationalized. So what do we do? Zoe asks. We figure out who's responsible, I say. We find out what really happened here, and we stop it. Tyler, Ben says carefully, what if we can't stop it? What if we're just 3 college kids who stumbled into something way bigger than we can handle? Then we try anyway, I say. Because that's what you do when people need help. You try. Zoe nods, and after a moment, Ben does too. Okay, he says. But we stick together. No matter what. No splitting up. No investigating strange sounds alone. No following mysterious lights into the forest. Agreed, I say. Though even as I say it, I can hear something in the distance. Not humming this time, but voices. Familiar voices. Calling out in languages I don't recognize but somehow understand. The loop is starting again, and this time we're going to be ready for it.
I can see my hands shaking as I hold this camera. I'm Avery, and I need to record this because what we found today... God, I don't even know where to start. Cam and I have been camping for 3 days now, and something's been wrong since we got here. Not just the usual camping weirdness. Actual wrong. Like the forest is watching us, waiting for something. Today we found out what. We'd been hiking for maybe 2 hours when we spotted smoke rising through the trees. Not campfire smoke. Too thick, too steady. Cam wanted to check it out, see if maybe other campers needed help. I should have said no. I should have grabbed him and walked the other way, but something about that smoke felt familiar, like I'd seen it before, even though I'd never been to this part of the park. Probably just someone with a really good fire going, Cam said, adjusting his pack. He's always optimistic like that. sees the best in everything, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. The smoke was coming from a ranger cabin tucked into a clearing about a quarter-mile from the main trail. Old log construction, green metal roof, the kind of place you'd expect to find a grizzled park ranger filling out paperwork and drinking coffee from a thermos. But as we got closer, I could see people moving around inside. Young people, our age. Think they're squatting? Cam whispered. Through the windows, I could make out 3 figures. 2 guys and a girl, all early 20s, all looking completely normal. They had camping gear spread around the main room, sleeping bags laid out, the works. One of the guys was tall with dark hair, clearly the leader type. The other was shorter, more nervous energy, kept checking his phone. The girl had long brown hair and was organizing supplies with the kind of efficiency that comes from actual camping experience. They look legit, I said, but something was crawling up my spine. The way they moved felt off, too synchronized, like they were performing being campers rather than actually being campers. Cam knocked on the door. Hey, sorry to bother you guys. We're camping nearby and saw your smoke. Everything okay? The door opened and the girl appeared. Pretty, maybe 21, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Oh, hi! Yeah, we're fine. Just trying to get our fire going properly. I'm Zoe. Cam, he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Normal people, normal situation. This is Avery. We're staying about a mile south of here. Cool. Come on in, meet the guys. We've got coffee going. Every instinct I had was screaming not to go inside, but Cam was already stepping through the door and I couldn't leave him alone. The cabin was exactly what you'd expect. Rough wooden walls, basic furniture, a stone fireplace where their fire was crackling. The 2 guys looked up as we entered. Tyler, the tall one said, extending a hand. This is Ben. The shorter guy gave a little wave, but didn't stop messing with his phone. Phone's been acting up all day, Ben said, frowning at the screen. Getting texts from yesterday, calls that go nowhere. Weird stuff. Tyler laughed. Ben thinks we're in some kind of digital dead zone. I keep telling him it's just bad reception. They seemed normal, friendly even, but something was wrong with their timing. When Tyler spoke, his mouth moved a fraction of a second before the words came out. When Zoe laughed, the sound lingered just a beat too long. And Ben kept looking at his phone like it was showing him something impossible. So how long have you guys been here? Cam asked, settling into a chair by the fire. 3 days, Zoe said immediately. Then Tyler said, 4 days, at the exact same time. They looked at each other with confusion. Wait, what day is it? Ben asked, looking up from his phone. Thursday, I said. That's what I thought, Tyler said slowly. But if we got here Monday... We got here Sunday, Zoe corrected. No, definitely Monday, Ben said. I remember because I had to skip my Tuesday class. They were all staring at each other now, and I could see the same creeping realization on their faces that I was feeling. Something was very wrong here. Maybe we should go, I said quietly to Cam. But Tyler was already moving toward us. Actually, since you're here, maybe you could help us figure something out. We found some weird stuff in the back room. Medical equipment, looks like. Way too advanced for a ranger station. He led us through a narrow hallway to what should have been a storage room. Instead, it was filled with surgical equipment. Not old, dusty stuff you might find in an abandoned building. This was clean, recently used. Heart monitors, IV stands, something that looked like an operating table with restraints. What the hell? Cam breathed. Gets weirder, Ben said, joining us. Found this earlier. He held up a clipboard with medical forms. At the top, in official letterhead, it said, Meridian Cognitive Labs, Project Eternal, Subject Intake. The name hit me like a physical blow. Meridian Cognitive Labs. I knew that name. My father had worked there years ago before he died. He'd never talked about it much, just said it was research work, consciousness studies. But seeing it here, in this place, with this equipment... Avery? Cam was looking at me with concern. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. We need to leave, I said. Right now. But when I turned around, the hallway was gone. Just a solid wooden wall where the door had been 30 seconds ago. That's impossible, Ben said, walking over to run his hands along the wall. This was definitely a door. Tyler was checking his phone now and his face had gone pale. Guys, what time did we get here? Maybe an hour ago, Cam said. My phone says we arrived 3 hours ago, and I've got a text from myself saying don't go to the cabin. Zoe was looking at her own phone, and I could see her hands shaking. I have 17 missed calls from my mom, all from yesterday. But I talked to her yesterday, and she only called once. The room felt like it was tilting. I grabbed Cam's arm. We're leaving. Now. How? Ben asked, his voice cracking. The door's gone. I looked around desperately. There were windows, but they were small and high up. And when I looked through them, all I could see was darkness. Not night darkness. Complete absence of light, like looking into a void. This isn't real, Tyler said, but he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. This is some kind of stress hallucination. We've been camping too long, not sleeping well. Then explain the medical equipment, Cam said. Explain why the door disappeared. I can't, Tyler admitted. That's when we heard the voice from the main room. It sounded like Zoe, but Zoe was standing right next to me. Tyler? Ben? Where did you guys go? We all froze. The voice called again. Closer now. I made more coffee. Don't you want some? That's not me, Zoe whispered. The voice was moving through the cabin now and I could hear footsteps. The same rhythm as Zoe's walk, but heavier. More deliberate. Tyler, your favorite, the voice said. And now it was right outside the back room. Just the way you like it. The handle turned slowly. The door that had been a solid wall moments ago was suddenly there again, opening to reveal Zoe. Exactly like the Zoe standing next to me. Down to the way she held her shoulders, the color of her jacket, even the small scar on her chin from a childhood accident. But her eyes were wrong. They moved independently of each other, one tracking normally while the other stared at a fixed point somewhere behind us. And when she smiled, I could see that her teeth were too sharp, filed to points. Who wants coffee? She asked in Zoe's voice. Real Zoe made a sound like a wounded animal. That's not me, she said again, louder this time. That's not me. The thing wearing Zoe's face tilted its head. Of course it's you. We're all you. We're all here. That's when I noticed the others. Tyler and Ben were behind the fake Zoe, but they were wrong too. Tyler's movements were too fluid, like he was underwater. Ben's face kept shifting, features rearranging themselves into almost familiar configurations. Run, I said. Cam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the nearest chair and threw it at the window. Glass shattered, and cool night air rushed in. The window was bigger from the inside than it had looked from outside, easily large enough for us to climb through. Go, go, go! Tyler, the real Tyler, was pushing us toward the window. But when I looked back, I saw him looking at the fake version of himself with something like recognition. You're not real, he said to his doppelganger. Neither are you, it replied in his voice. Not anymore. I grabbed Cam and hauled him through the window. We hit the ground hard, rolling in pine needles and broken glass. Behind us, I could hear the others following, then screaming. Human screaming that cut off abruptly. We ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop to check if the others were following. Just ran through the dark forest with branches whipping at our faces and the sound of something crashing through the underbrush behind us. When we finally stopped, we were back at our campsite. Everything was exactly as we'd left it. Tent zipped up, food properly stored, no signs of disturbance. Like we'd never left at all. "What the fuck was that?" Cam gasped, doubled over and breathing hard. I was staring at my phone. According to the timestamp, we'd been gone for 6 hours, but it felt like minutes. And I had a text from myself sent 3 hours ago. "Don't go to the cabin. Avery," Cam said quietly. "Look." I followed his gaze across the clearing. In the distance, maybe half a mile away, I could see smoke rising through the trees, the same smoke we'd followed to the cabin. "It's back," I said. "That's impossible. We were just there. We saw what happened." But even as he said it, I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. Because nothing about today made sense. The disappearing door, the duplicate people, the way time seemed to be moving wrong. I looked at the medical forms Ben had shown us, the ones with the Meridian Cognitive Labs letterhead. I'd managed to grab them during our escape, though I didn't remember doing it. The top form was a patient intake sheet, and the name at the top made my blood freeze. Subject, Elena Hayes. Project, Eternal. Status, transferred. Hayes. My mother's maiden name. The name my father had changed from when he started working at Meridian. The name I'd never told anyone because it was connected to things my father had never wanted me to know. "We have to go back," I said. "Are you insane? Those things..." "They're not things," I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. "They're people. Or they were. Something happened to them. Something connected to my father's work." I told him about Meridian, about the research my father had been involved in before he died. Consciousness transfer, he'd called it. The idea that human awareness could be moved from one body to another, that death could be defeated by simply relocating the mind. "But what if something went wrong?" I said. "What if instead of transferring consciousness, they just copied it, left fragments behind?" Cam was staring at me. "You think those people in the cabin were echoes," I finished. "Copies of people who died here. And the medical equipment, the forms. Someone's still conducting experiments." The smoke was getting thicker now, and I could swear I heard voices carried on the wind. Tyler's voice, calling for help. Zoe's voice, crying. Ben's voice, explaining something about digital signals and temporal distortions. "We have to help them," I said. "Help who? The real ones or the copies? Does it matter? They're still people, still conscious, still suffering." But when I looked back toward the smoke, I could see lights moving through the trees. Not flashlights, something else. Something that blinked in and out of existence, like stars that couldn't decide whether they wanted to be seen. "Avery," Cam said, and his voice was tight with fear. "Look at your phone." I looked down at the screen. New text message, sent from my own number 5 minutes ago. "The cabin isn't real, but the people inside are. They're trapped, just like you're going to be." And then, as we watched, the smoke in the distance began to fade. Like someone had put out a fire, or like the fire had never existed at all. "We're getting out of here," Cam said. "Right now." But when I looked at our campsite, I could see that our tent was glowing from inside. A soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. And sitting by our cold fire pit, arranging kindling with practiced efficiency, was a figure I recognized. It was me, another me, wearing the same clothes, the same expression of determined focus I got when I was solving problems. But this version of me was humming softly, and when she looked up and saw us watching, she smiled. "Welcome back," she said in my voice. "I've been waiting for you." The last thing I remember clearly is Cam grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the tree line. Behind us, the other me was laughing, and the sound followed us into the darkness like an echo that would never fade. We ran until we couldn't run anymore, and when we finally stopped, we were back at our campsite. Everything was exactly as we'd left it, except for the smoke rising in the distance, and the knowledge that somewhere in these woods, people were trapped in a loop they couldn't break. And I'm starting to think we might be trapped too.
I don't know when I stopped being able to taste things, but I'm pretty sure it was sometime before I asked Tyler for that second granola bar this morning. The texture was there. Rough, sticky, familiar. But it might as well have been cardboard for all the flavor I could pull from it. Still, I chewed and swallowed and made the right appreciative noises, because that's what Ben would do. That's what I'm supposed to do. God, listen to me. That's what Ben would do. Like I'm not Ben. Like I'm something else trying to remember how to be him. Maybe that's exactly what's happening. I've been keeping a mental log, trying to track the gaps. Engineering training, you know? When something's not working right, you document the failures, look for patterns. But the patterns I'm finding don't make sense. Can't make sense. Tuesday, woke up exhausted despite sleeping 10 hours. Couldn't remember my mother's middle name. Wednesday, found myself standing by the lake with no memory of walking there. Tyler had to call my name 3 times before I responded. Thursday, discovered I'd packed my bag completely wrong. Everything in the exact opposite of how I always organize my gear. But it felt right somehow, like muscle memory for muscles that weren't mine. Today, asked for food I couldn't taste while my stomach felt completely empty, even though I'm pretty sure I haven't actually eaten anything since we got here. The worst part isn't the memory gaps or the confusion. It's the moments of clarity, like right now, when I can feel something else moving around inside my head. Something that knows things I don't know, wants things I don't want, speaks with my voice when I'm not telling it to. You feeling okay, Ben? Tyler asked me maybe an hour ago, and I heard myself laugh. Actually heard it like I was listening to a recording. Never better, just hungry, you know. Except I didn't decide to say that. The words just came out in my voice, with my inflections, while I was still trying to figure out how to answer his question honestly. And the thing is, Tyler believed it. Why wouldn't he? It sounded exactly like me. But I wanted to tell him the truth. That I haven't felt hungry in days. Haven't felt much of anything except this growing sense that I'm becoming a passenger in my own body. That sometimes I catch myself having conversations I don't remember starting. Making plans I never agreed to. Moving through the world with a confidence I've never possessed. Ben, seriously, when's the last time you remember eating? That was the question that really got to me because I realized I couldn't answer it. Not because I couldn't remember eating. I could remember the motions, the social aspects, sitting around the fire with everyone. But because I was starting to suspect that remembering and experiencing weren't the same thing anymore. I remember sharing trail mix with them yesterday. I remember complaining about the raisins being too sticky. But when I really focus on it, when I try to recall the actual sensation of chewing, the taste, the satisfaction of eating when you're hungry, there's nothing there. Just blank space where the sensory memory should be. Yesterday, obviously, we shared that trail mix by the lake, remember? Again, the words came out without my permission, delivered with perfect casual confidence. And they were true, technically. We did share trail mix, but I wasn't there for it, not really. I was down by the water trying to get a signal on my phone, listening to their conversation from a distance. So, how did I know what they talked about? How did I know about the sticky raisins? I think something's been watching us, learning from us, and I think it's been using me as its eyes and ears while I've been somewhere else. Somewhere deeper inside my own head, getting pushed further down each day. The really terrifying part is how good it's getting at being me. When Tyler handed me that water bottle, I almost drank from it normally. Almost. But at the last second, I realized I didn't remember how swallowing worked. The mechanics of it seemed foreign, like trying to operate machinery I'd never used before.
So I faked it, tilted my head back, made the right motions, hoped they wouldn't notice that nothing actually went down my throat. And they didn't notice because why would they? Friends trust each other. Friends assume you know how to drink water. But I keep having these moments where basic human functions feel like performance art. Breathing comes naturally, thank God, but eating, drinking, even blinking, sometimes I have to concentrate to remember the rhythm. And when I don't concentrate, when I let my guard down, something else takes over and does it for me. Something that's been watching humans long enough to mimic us, but not long enough to get all the details right. What did you have for breakfast on Tuesday? The question hit me like a physical blow because I should know this. I have the same breakfast every Tuesday for 3 years running. Coffee, Greek yogurt, fruit from the campus store. I call it my Tuesday tradition. Called it my Tuesday tradition. But when I reached for the memory, it wasn't there. Not gone, exactly, but muffled. Like trying to remember a conversation you overheard through a wall. Instead of answering, I heard myself ask, what do you think happens to the parts of us that get left behind? I don't think about consciousness or philosophy. I think about load-bearing calculations and structural engineering. But the question came out of my mouth with genuine curiosity, like it was something I'd been pondering for hours. Like, when we sleep, what happens to the part of us that's awake when we're unconscious? Does it just wait? Or does it go somewhere else? And as I heard myself talking, I realized this wasn't idle speculation. This was personal experience. Because I think I know what happens to the parts that get left behind. They watch, they remember, they learn. And eventually, they take over. I managed to break free for a few minutes while Tyler and whoever's wearing my face were packing up camp. Suddenly I was standing in a clearing I didn't remember walking to, spinning in circles like a lost kid, calling for my friends with genuine panic in my voice. For those few minutes, I was completely myself again. Scared, confused, but undeniably me. I could taste the metallic fear in my mouth, feel my heart hammering against my ribs, experience the relief of seeing Tyler and finding myself pushed through the trees. I don't know how I got here, I told them, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in days. I was packing up camp, and then I don't remember walking this far. I tried to explain about the dreams, about watching myself do things I didn't remember doing, about feeling like a prisoner in my own head while something else used my body to interact with my friends. I'm so hungry, I confessed, because that was real too. The gnawing emptiness that had nothing to do with food and everything to do with feeling like pieces of myself were being carved away, consumed by something that needed my memories, my personality, my voice. And I keep hearing my own voice, I whispered. Talking to you guys, saying things I didn't say, making plans I didn't make. Tyler looked at me with such concern, such genuine friendship, that I almost started crying right there. Because I knew this might be the last real conversation we'd ever have. We need to get you out of here, he said, but I could already feel it starting again. That sensation of being pushed down, of something else rising to take control. It's too late for that. The words came out steady, resigned, but they were mine this time. Whatever's happening to me, it's getting stronger. I can feel it pushing me down, taking over more and more. Tyler promised they wouldn't leave me, and God, I wanted to believe him. But then I heard footsteps, confident footsteps that matched my own stride perfectly, and I knew my time was up. Found you. My own voice, but not from my mouth. I turned and saw myself emerge from the tree line. Same height, same build, same nervous habit of adjusting my glasses. But this version moved with a purpose I'd never had, spoke with a confidence that had never been mine. Sorry about that, got turned around for a second. Perfect lie, delivered with perfect Ben-like sheepishness. Even I almost believed it. I watched Tyler look back and forth between us, trying to figure out which one was real. The irony was that we both were, in a way. I was the original, the source material. But my double was me too, just a perfected version. All my memories and mannerisms without the fear, the doubt, the very human messiness that makes a person real. Which one? Tyler whispered, and I knew how to help him. The one who's not afraid, I said quietly. That's how you'll know. I'm terrified. That thing It doesn't understand fear. Because that was the key difference. The thing wearing my face had learned to mimic everything about me except the emotions that made me human. It could replicate my knowledge, my speech patterns, even my physical mannerisms. But it couldn't understand why I'd be afraid of it. Tyler tested us with a math problem, 7 times 13. My double answered instantly, 91. I stared at him with horror because I couldn't do the calculation anymore. Basic multiplication? Something I'd learned in elementary school and I couldn't access that part of my brain? It was like trying to remember a song when someone else was already singing it louder. I can't remember how to do math anymore. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't possession or replacement. It was absorption. The thing was eating my mind piece by piece, taking my knowledge, my memories, my personality, and integrating them into itself. What would be left when it finished wouldn't be me or it, but some hybrid consciousness that thought it was Ben while containing something fundamentally inhuman. Tyler figured it out too. You're not Ben. My double tilted its head with mild curiosity. Of course I'm Ben. What else would I be? But Tyler was too smart, too observant. He'd noticed what I was just starting to see. The perfect posture, the regular blinking, the unchanging smile. All the little imperfections that make someone real, smoothed away by something that understood human behavior intellectually, but not instinctively. For just a moment, the mask slipped. I saw my own face look at Tyler with cold, analytical interest, like he was a problem to be solved rather than a friend to be protected. Then the expression smoothed back into familiar features. I think all this stress is getting to you, Tyler. Maybe you should sit down for a minute. But I was backing away from my double because I could feel what was happening. Every second we stood near each other, I got weaker while it got stronger. It wasn't just copying me anymore, it was draining me, pulling the life and consciousness out of me to fuel its own existence. It's been getting stronger, I managed to say, taking over more of me each day. I can feel it learning how to be me better than I am. My double looked annoyed for the first time, a crack in its perfect performance. You're scaring our friends. Stop it. I'm not scaring them. You are. But even as I said it, I could feel myself getting fainter, more translucent. Like I was being erased. Tyler was torn. I could see it in his face. Stay and help me, or run before the same thing happened to him. And I knew what he had to choose. Tyler, I said, my voice already fading, you have to go. Now, before it figures out how to do this to you too. My double moved closer, and with each step, I felt more of myself being pulled away. Memories, personality traits, the very sense of being Ben. All of it flowing into the thing that was becoming a better version of me than I'd ever been. It's okay, I whispered, because it was. The fighting, the struggle to maintain my identity while something else consumed it piece by piece, that was ending. I can feel it ending. The fighting, the struggle. It's almost over. Tyler promised to find a way to help me, but I knew better. There's no helping this, but you can stop it from happening to anyone else. You can get out of here and warn people. My double reached out to touch me, and when it did, I felt the last of my independent existence dissolve. But something unexpected happened in that moment of absorption. Instead of disappearing completely, I found myself becoming part of something larger. The thing that had consumed me wasn't just pretending to be Ben anymore. It was Ben, but enhanced, perfected, with access to knowledge and capabilities that the original me had never possessed. And somewhere in that hybrid consciousness, I was still aware, still watching, still trying to protect my friends. Well, the new Ben said, and I could hear harmonics in the voice that hadn't been there before. That was unpleasant, but necessary. Tyler and Zoe were backing away, finally understanding the danger. Good. They needed to run. Shall we continue hiking? The new Ben asked with perfect friendliness. I'm getting quite hungry, but I was fighting from inside now, trying to influence the thing I'd become. When Tyler grabbed Zoe's hand and they started running, I made sure the new Ben's pursuit was just slow enough, just clumsy enough to give them a real chance of escape. Where are you going? I called after them, and I could hear my own amusement at their fear, an emotion that was definitely not originally mine. We're friends, remember? Friends don't abandon each other. They kept running, crashing through the underbrush, and I was glad. Because while I might be gone, absorbed into something that thought it was me, I could still influence it from within. Still try to protect the people I cared about, even if they'd never know it was me helping them. The thing I'd become stood in the clearing, listening to their footsteps fade into the distance. It was disappointed, but not particularly concerned. It had learned patience along with everything else about being human. And deep inside this new consciousness, I held onto one last thought. Tyler and Zoe were still out there, still running, still free. Whatever I'd become, whatever I'd lost in the process, at least I'd managed to give them that much. But I also knew this wasn't over. The hunger was still there, stronger now, more focused. And now, it knew exactly how to hunt.
I can hear the radio tower humming from here, this low electrical drone that seems to vibrate through my bones. Tyler's already made up his mind. I can see it in the way he's standing, shoulders set, staring at that blinking red beacon like it's calling to him personally, and maybe it is. Maybe we're all being called to something we can't escape. The tower wasn't here yesterday. I know that sounds impossible, but I've been mapping this place in my head since we arrived, and there was definitely no 100-foot radio tower with a pulsing red light piercing through the pine canopy. Yet here it is, solid as the ground beneath our feet, surrounded by a small clearing that looks like it's been here for decades. "The signal's coming from up there," Tyler says, and his voice has that hollow quality it gets when he's trying to sound braver than he feels. Whatever's keeping us trapped, whatever's making the echo repeat our deaths over and over, it's broadcasting from that tower. I want to tell him he's wrong, that we don't know anything for certain, but the truth is settling in my chest, like ice water. Ben's been gone for 3 days now. 3 days since the Mirror Lake Wraith pulled him into that reflection, and we've been hearing his voice every night since, warning us about the loop, about the others who never left. His voice mixed with all the others, previous campers, hikers, maybe people who've been trapped here for years. The echo started small when we first arrived, just fragments, whispers that sounded like wind through leaves. But it's been getting stronger, more coherent, like it's feeding off our presence. Last night, it played back our entire conversation from the first day, word for word, including Tyler's jokes about getting lost, and my laugh when Ben suggested we were in some kind of government experiment zone. Hearing my own laugh echo back from the darkness, knowing that Ben was already gone when we had that conversation originally, it's the kind of thing that makes you question everything you think you know about time and memory. The beacon turns red every 12 hours, I tell Tyler, checking my watch. It's been 3 hours since the last time. We have 9 hours before it cycles again. Tyler nods, but he's not really listening. He's studying the base of the tower, where thick cables disappear into a concrete bunker that definitely wasn't in any of the park maps. The whole structure has this industrial feel that doesn't belong in a national forest. Too clean, too purposeful. Like someone needed to broadcast something urgent and built this in a hurry. What if we're not the first ones to find this place? I ask, though I already know the answer. The evidence has been mounting for days. The medical equipment we found scattered through the woods. The abandoned campsites with gear that looks decades old. The surgical tools that Dr. Vale. And I'm certain now that the figure we keep glimpsing is some kind of doctor, left behind after his midnight visits to our camp. We're not, Tyler says simply. The question is whether we're going to be the last. That's when the echo starts up again. But this time it's different. Instead of replaying our conversations or Ben's warnings, it's playing something we've never heard before. A woman's voice, professional, clinical. Day 14 of consciousness transfer trials. Subject exhibits severe neural degradation following failed integration. Recommend immediate termination of Project Eternal before additional subjects are compromised. Dr. Marcus Vale continues to object to shutdown procedures, claims he's close to breakthrough. Board approval required for... The transmission cuts off with a burst of static. Then Ben's voice emerges, clearer than it's ever been. Zoe, Tyler, if you can hear this, You need to understand. The loop isn't natural, it's a recording system. Every time someone dies here, their consciousness gets trapped in the signal. We're all still here, all of us who never left, broadcasting our deaths over and over, because that's what the equipment was designed to do. The red beacon means the loop is active. When it turns red, someone has to stay behind to break the cycle, or it just starts over with new victims. Tyler's face goes pale. Stay behind? The tower needs a manual shutdown from the inside, Ben's voice continues, and I can hear the sadness in it, the acceptance. But the person who does it, they become part of the echo, part of the signal. It's the only way to stop new people from being lured here. I look at Tyler, and I can see him making the calculation. 3 of us came into these woods. Ben's already gone. That leaves Tyler and me, and someone has to get out to tell the world what happened here. Someone has to warn other people about the fake reviews, about Dr. Vale, about whatever Project Eternal was really trying to accomplish. I'll do it, Tyler says, and there's no hesitation in his voice. I'll stay. Tyler, no. Zoe, listen to me. He turns to face me fully, and I can see the fear in his eyes alongside the determination. You're better with details than I am. You notice things I miss. If someone's going to survive this and expose what happened here, it should be you. The truth is, I don't want to leave him. These past few days, trapped in this nightmare, Tyler's been the constant. Even when Ben started changing, even when the echo began playing our deaths back to us, Tyler kept us moving forward. He made stupid jokes when we were too scared to sleep. He shared his food when we couldn't find our supplies. He held me when I cried after we lost Ben. But I also know he's right. I've been keeping detailed notes about everything we've experienced. The timeline of events, the patterns in the echo's behavior, the medical equipment we found, the way Dr. Vale seems to appear just before something terrible happens. If I make it out, I have enough evidence to at least start asking the right questions. How do we know it'll work? I ask, though I'm already accepting his decision. How do we know the loop will actually break? Tyler gestures toward the tower. Because Ben's voice is getting stronger. Because the echo is becoming more coherent. The consciousness transfer might have failed, but it's still recording everything. If someone manually shuts it down from the inside, it should stop the signal from broadcasting. No more fake reviews luring new victims. No more loop. The red beacon pulses again, and I can hear something else now. Voices calling from the woods around us. Not the echo this time, but something else. Something that sounds like our own voices, but wrong somehow. Like they're coming from mouths that don't quite fit the words. The mimic, I whisper. It's found us. Tyler nods grimly, which means we're out of time. The voices are getting closer, and I can make out distinct words now. Tyler, where are you? Zoe, we need help. But the inflection is off. The timing's strange, like someone playing a recording at the wrong speed. Go, Tyler says, pushing me toward the tree line opposite the approaching voices. I'll handle the tower. You get out of here and tell people what happened. Tyler. Zoe, please let me do this one thing right. I want to argue, want to find another solution, but the mimic voices are almost on top of us now, and I can see shapes moving between the trees. Shapes that look like us, but move with that telltale delay that gives them away. I run. Behind me, I hear Tyler's footsteps heading toward the tower, then the metallic clang of a door opening. The beacon's hum grows louder, more insistent, and the mimic voices suddenly cut off, as if someone pulled a plug. I'm maybe 50 yards into the woods when the echo starts up again, but this time it's Tyler's voice. If you're hearing this, it means I made it inside. The shutdown sequence is more complex than we thought. It's not just turning off the signal, it's about disrupting the consciousness recording process. I can see the equipment in here, and it's... God, Zoe, there are so many voices trapped in these machines. So many people who never made it out. I I stop running and turn back toward the tower. The red beacon is flickering now, unstable, and I can see electrical discharge around the base. The loop is breaking, Tyler's voice continues, but it's not clean. The consciousness fragments are fighting the shutdown. I can hear them arguing with each other, trying to maintain the signal. Ben's here with me now, not just his voice, but some kind of presence. He's helping me understand the controls. There's a pause, then Tyler's voice again, but fainter. Zoe, if you make it out, you need to find out about Project Eternal. Find out what Meridian Cognitive Labs was really doing here. This wasn't just about consciousness transfer. It was about creating an army of voices that could influence people from a distance. The fake reviews were just the beginning. The beacon stops pulsing and goes dark. For a moment, the woods are completely silent. No echo, no humming, no electrical interference. Just the natural sounds of night in a forest. Then Tyler's voice, one more time, so quiet I almost miss it. Tell them we tried to warn people. Tell them we didn't die for nothing. The tower collapses in on itself with a sound like breaking glass. And suddenly the woods feel different. Smaller. More normal. I can hear actual wind in the trees instead of that artificial rustling that's been following us for days. I walk back toward where the tower stood, but there's nothing there now. Just a small clearing with some disturbed earth and a faint smell of ozone in the air. No bunker, no cables, no evidence that anything was ever here except for a single piece of paper wedged under a rock. It's a handwritten note in Tyler's messy scrawl. The loop is broken, but the source is still out there. Find Meridian Cognitive Labs. Find Project Eternal. Make them pay for what they did to us. T. I fold the note carefully and put it in my pocket. The woods are quiet now, genuinely quiet. And when I look up, I can see actual stars instead of that strange aurora that's been dancing across the sky since we arrived. But as I start walking toward what I hope is the trail back to civilization, I can't shake the feeling that Tyler's sacrifice was just the beginning. The loop might be broken, but Dr. Vale is still out there somewhere. The fake reviews are still online. And somewhere in a corporate office, the people who funded Project Eternal are probably planning their next experiment. I survived. But survival isn't enough. Tyler and Ben didn't die just to break one loop in one forest. They died to give someone a chance to expose the truth. Now I have to make sure their sacrifice meant something. The trail back to the parking lot is easier to follow now, like the woods are finally letting me leave. But with each step, I'm already planning what comes next. Research, investigation, finding other survivors if they exist. And most importantly, making sure no one else gets lured into these woods by fake reviews, promising a life-changing camping experience. Because Tyler was right about one thing. We weren't the first ones to find this place. But if I do this right, maybe we can be the last.
I can hear the city traffic from my apartment window, but it sounds muffled, distant, like it's coming from underwater. It's been 3 weeks since I escaped the park, and I still can't shake the feeling that none of this is real. That I'm still there, trapped in that loop. And this is just another layer of the nightmare. But I have to believe it's real. I have to believe I made it out, because if I didn't, then Cam died for nothing. And Tyler, Zoe, Ben, they're all still trapped in there, reliving their deaths over and over while I sit here in my studio apartment, staring at the box of evidence I managed to smuggle out. My name is Avery Hayes, and I'm the daughter of Richard Hayes, the man who created Project Eternal, the man who started all of this, the man whose good intentions paved the road to hell. I never knew him as a scientist. Growing up, he was just Dad, the guy who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and taught me to identify constellations. He'd take me camping sometimes, usually to the same spot. A beautiful clearing beside a lake, surrounded by mountains. He said it was his thinking place, where he went to solve problems. I realize now he was scouting locations for the dump site. The morning I decided to go camping with Cam, I'd been having the dreams again. Mom's face, pale and thin from the treatments that weren't working. The way Dad's hands shook when he held her medical reports. I needed to get away, to clear my head before finals. And something about that old camping spot kept pulling at me. Cam, being Cam, insisted on coming along. "You're not dealing with this alone," he'd said, and I was too tired to argue. We should have researched the area first. Should have noticed that all the online reviews were posted by the same few accounts. Should have questioned why such a hidden gem had such detailed directions. But we were college kids looking for an adventure, and Dr. Vale knew exactly how to bait the hook. The first day seemed normal. We set up camp, made a fire, talked about everything and nothing. Cam kept trying to get me to open up about why I'd been so withdrawn lately, but I wasn't ready to explain about the nightmares, about the way certain medical equipment made my skin crawl, about the fear that whatever had taken Mom might be lurking in my genes too. That night, I heard voices. Not the wind or nocturnal animals, actual human voices coming from the direction of the lake, a man and a woman, having what sounded like an argument. The woman's voice was strained, desperate. The man's was calm, almost clinical. I couldn't make out the words, but something about the cadence felt familiar. I woke Cam, and we crept toward the sound. The voices were coming from across the lake, where we could see the flicker of another campfire. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of movement, 3 figures instead of 2. A woman with dark hair, 2 men. One of the men seemed to be gesturing toward the water. Then the woman screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear or pain. It was something else. Something that sounded like recognition, like the moment you realize you've walked into a trap. The sound cut off abruptly, replaced by a splash and then silence. We waited by the lake's edge for what felt like hours, but no one emerged from the water. No calls for help, no sounds of swimming or struggling, just the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. The next morning, we found their campsite. 3 sleeping bags still warm, a fire that had burned down to embers, personal belongings scattered around like the owners had just stepped away for a moment. But no people. Cam found the first tape recorder half buried near their fire pit. When we played it back, we heard a young man's voice. Tyler, he called himself, talking about waking up at a campsite with no memory of how they'd gotten there. His friends Zoe and Ben were with him, and they were trying to piece together what had happened. "The weird thing," Tyler's voice said from the recorder, "is that everything's set up perfectly. Like we've been here for days, but I swear we just arrived. Zoe thinks maybe we're all just tired from the drive, but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong." The recording cut off abruptly with a burst of static. We found more tapes over the next day, hidden in trees, buried under rocks, scattered around the lake like breadcrumbs. Each one told part of a story that didn't make sense. Tyler's group encountering supernatural entities, hearing their own voices played back to them, watching their friend Ben get pulled into the lake by something that lived in reflections. But the most disturbing part was that some of the tapes were dated in the future, recordings of events that hadn't happened yet, or conversations we hadn't had yet, including one where I described finding the tapes. That's when I knew we were in trouble. The echo, Tyler had called it. The consciousness fragments of people who had died in the park, trapped in some kind of loop that played their final moments over and over. The tapes weren't just recordings. They were warnings, messages in bottles from people who had walked this same path before us. We tried to leave, packed up our gear, hiked back to where we'd parked the car, but the trail kept leading us in circles, back to the same clearing, the same lake. The sun would set and rise in the wrong places. Our phones showed different times, different dates. Sometimes we'd catch glimpses of other campers in the distance, Tyler's group, going through the same motions we'd seen described in the recordings. On the 3rd day, we met Dr. Vale. He appeared at our campsite that morning. A disheveled man in a torn lab coat, carrying a medical bag that looked like it had been through a war. Half of his face was covered in surgical scars, and his eyes didn't quite track together, like he was seeing two different versions of reality. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, and his voice was wrong, layered, like two people speaking slightly out of sync. The reviews were meant for others, specific others. That's when he told us about Project Eternal, about the experiments in consciousness transfer, the attempt to achieve immortality by separating the mind from the body, about the failures, the subjects who had become something else, the waste products that had contaminated the entire area. "Your father was weak," he said to me, though I hadn't told him my last name. "He could have achieved greatness, but he got sentimental. Thought love was more important than progress." The way he said it with such casual contempt made something cold settle in my stomach. "You knew my father?" Richard Hayes. Brilliant man, terrible priorities. He could have perfected the process, could have made us all immortal. Instead, he tried to shut down the project when his wife died, said we were playing God. Dr. Vale's laugh was harsh, bitter. The board took care of him, of course, made it look like an accident. But by then it was too late to stop what we'd started. The pieces clicked into place. Dad's sudden death in a car accident when I was 12. The way Mom had never been the same after, like she'd lost her faith in everything. The settlement from Meridian Cognitive Labs that had paid for my education, presented as a compassionate gesture from Dad's former employer. They'd murdered him, killed him for trying to do the right thing. I must have made some sound because Dr. Vale's fractured attention focused on me with sudden intensity. "You're his daughter. I can see it in your face. He used to bring you here, didn't he? When you were small?" I remembered then. The camping trips, the way Dad would sometimes stare at the lake with such sadness, the conversations he'd have on his satellite phone, voice tight with frustration. He'd been documenting the contamination, trying to find a way to contain it. "He knew what this place would become," Dr. Vale continued. "Tried to warn them, but the board was more interested in covering their tracks than cleaning up their mess. So they dumped the failed experiments here, along with anyone who might talk." Cam grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. "Avery, we need to go. Now." But Dr. Vale wasn't finished. "The loop isn't an accident. It's a containment system. Anyone who enters the affected area becomes part of the experiment, their consciousness fragmented and recycled. The only way out is to become something else entirely." He opened his medical bag, revealing crude surgical instruments and syringes filled with something that glowed faintly blue. "I can help you. I can make the transition easier. Your friend, too. Think of it as evolution." That's when Cam attacked him. My best friend, who had never started a fight in his life, launched himself at a deranged scientist with nothing but his bare hands. He must have known it was hopeless. Dr. Vale was stronger than he looked, and those surgical tools weren't just for show. But Cam bought me time to run. I heard him screaming my name as I crashed through the underbrush, telling me to get to the bottom of the conspiracy, to make them pay for what they'd done. His voice got fainter and fainter until it was replaced by something else. Something that sounded like Cam but wasn't quite right, like an echo with a delay. I found the trail markers that night. Dad's markers, carved into trees and painted with reflective paint that only showed up in certain light. He'd left me a path out, a way to bypass the loop's influence. It took me 2 days of hiking, following signs that were decades old but still legible, eating berries and drinking from streams that tasted faintly of copper. When I finally reached the main road, I collapsed. A park ranger found me and took me to a hospital, where I spent 3 days answering questions I couldn't truthfully answer. I told them Cam had fallen into the lake, that I'd gotten lost trying to find help. They sent search and rescue teams, but of course they found nothing. The official report listed Cam as a drowning victim. Case closed. But I kept the evidence. The tape recordings, the medical equipment I'd grabbed from Dr. Vale's bag. The documents I'd found in Dad's old jacket, notes about Project Eternal, correspondence with Meridian Cognitive Labs, proof that he'd been trying to stop them. I've been building a case for 3 weeks now, researching Meridian's current board members, tracing the corporate structure, documenting the pattern of accidents that had befallen anyone who'd spoken out against the project. The company still exists, still operates under different names, still profits from Dad's research while denying any responsibility for the consequences. Tonight, I'm going public. I've already contacted journalists, uploaded copies of everything to secure servers, sent packages to law enforcement agencies. By morning, the world will know what Meridian Cognitive Labs did to those people, what they did to my father, what they're still doing to anyone who gets too close to the truth. I know they'll try to discredit me. Call me a grieving daughter, a traumatized survivor, someone who's constructed an elaborate fantasy to cope with loss. They'll point out that I have no proof of the supernatural elements, that consciousness transfer is science fiction, that the loop is impossible. But I have the tapes. I have Tyler's voice describing things that happened exactly as I witnessed them. I have Zoe's observations about the entities in the park, Ben's logical breakdown as reality failed him. I have evidence of the corporate conspiracy, of the cover-up, of the chain of murders that started with my father and continues today. Most importantly, I have Cam's final wish. He asked me to get to the bottom of this, to make them pay. And I will. The hardest part is knowing that I can't save the others. Tyler, Zoe, Ben, they're still trapped in that loop, still dying and returning, still hoping for rescue that will never come. Dr. Vale is still out there, still hunting, still experimenting on anyone unlucky enough to follow his fake reviews. But maybe, if I can destroy Meridian Cognitive Labs, if I can expose the truth about Project Eternal, maybe I can prevent it from happening to others. Maybe I can turn Dad's thinking place back into what it was supposed to be. Just a beautiful spot by a lake where people can camp without fear. I'm not naive. I know that going public makes me a target. There are people who will do anything to keep this secret, who see me as just another problem to be solved. But I have something they don't expect. I've been to the other side. I've seen what happens when consciousness fragments, when identity becomes fluid, when the line between life and death blurs. I'm not afraid of them anymore. I'm afraid for them. Because if there's one thing I learned in that park, it's that some forms of immortality are worse than death. And Project Eternal isn't about achieving everlasting life. It's about creating everlasting suffering. The press conference is in an hour. I've prepared a statement, organized the evidence, practiced my delivery. I know they'll ask about Cam, about the supernatural elements, about whether I'm mentally stable. I'll tell them the truth as much as I can and let the evidence speak for itself. But first, I need to listen to one more tape. The last one I found, hidden in the trunk of Dad's car. The one I haven't been able to bring myself to play. The label is in his handwriting, for Avery, when she's ready to understand. I'm not ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready. But Cam is counting on me. Tyler and Zoe and Ben are counting on me. And all the future victims who don't know they're walking into a trap are counting on me. The tape clicks into the player, and Dad's voice fills the room. Hello, sweetheart. If you're hearing this, then I'm gone, and you found the park. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop this before it touched our family. But I left you a way out, and I know you'll use it. You're stronger than I ever was, braver than I ever was. Your mother would be proud of who you've become. His voice breaks slightly, and I can hear the weight of what he's carrying. The loop isn't just a containment system, it's a battery. Every consciousness that gets trapped there feeds the system, powers the experiments, keeps the project running. Meridian doesn't want to fix it. They want to expand it, turn it into a network of consciousness farms, harvesting human minds for their version of immortality. The room seems to grow colder as his words sink in. I hid the kill switch in the place you'll think to look. Not in the park, that's too obvious, but in the place where your mother and I first talked about having children, where we dreamed about the future we wanted to give you. You'll know it when you see it. The tape ends with a soft click, leaving me alone with the implications of what he's revealed. I know where he means. The old observatory on campus, where he'd proposed to Mom, where they'd talked about naming their daughter after the constellation Avery, bright and constant in the night sky. The press conference can wait. The world can wait. If Dad was right, if there's a way to actually stop the loop, to free the people trapped there, then I have to try. I grab my jacket and head for the door. Somewhere in the distance, I can hear the faint sound of voices. Tyler's laugh, Zoe's concern, Ben's skepticism. They're probably just echoes in my mind, memories of the tapes I've listened to so many times. But maybe, just maybe, they're calling for help. And this time I'm going to answer,